Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Fridays. We have something really exciting. We're going to talk about Queen Hatshepsut today, and she's one of my favorite pharaohs, one of my favorite figures from ancient Egyptian history because she kind of defied the odds of her time period, becoming a queen, kind of at a time when everybody else was boys. Everybody else who was a pharaoh was male. So you're going to today be, as you're looking at your screen now, you're seeing the PowerPoint, but if you're not ready to do this yet, please go ahead and pause me and go back to the fill in the blank notes. If you can print them, that would be ideal. If not, take a picture of them so that you can copy down the questions and the answers while you're going through. Or choice C would be to copy down all the questions first with the blanks, and then you can fill them in as you go. So if you are ready to go, then I'm going to assume that you are. So I'm going to go ahead and go through. As usual, there are underlined, the answers are underlined that need to go on your fill in the blank notes. So I subtitled this The King Herself, and that is because she sometimes depicted herself as male, and we'll talk about why as we go through. So her life. She was born around 1508 BC, and we say around because birth and death records were not kept in the way that we keep them now, which is very organized, and you can figure out exactly when someone was born or died. Died around 1458 BC. So when you're trying to figure out how old someone was with BC dates, all you do is subtract like normal. Big number on top, little number on the bottom, subtract. So 1508 minus 1458. She was about 50 years old when she died, which was right around a little bit over the average lifespan for an ancient Egyptian. She ruled during the 18th dynasty, which was known as the Golden Age. And this is important because King Tut was also part of this dynasty. So somehow, some way, they were slightly related, although pretty far apart, because a dynasty is the reign, the king or queen job being passed down through a family. And she was queen for 20 years, which is quite a long time. She's only lived to be 50, and 20 of those years were queen. Was she a good queen? Yes, she's considered one of Egypt's most successful pharaohs, and we'll look at what defines success for an ancient pharaoh. Just for your background knowledge, her husband was king before her. He passed away. It was supposed to go to their son. He was very young at the time, so she kind of took the role of making decisions until he got old enough. But she continued to make decisions and become the queen. The stepson, by the way, was not nice. We'll talk about him later. So there's some photos that are obviously fake. We have no photos of her. There was no photography at this time in history, but we have some ideas because of her body, mummy. Scientists and forensic scientists can kind of refigure, restructure what they think she might have looked like. So that's her death mask on the right, and then what we think she might have looked like on the left. Just a note about eyeliner. Males and females who could afford it in ancient Egypt wore a lot of black eyeliner because it helped deflect the sun at a time when there wasn't sunglasses, and they lived in the desert, so they needed any help they could get from the sun. This is her tomb. So she has quite a beautiful, elaborate tomb in the Valley of the Kings, which we will talk about. She does not live, or her body did not live, or rather die. Her body was not in a pyramid. So remember that the pyramids there were only those three big ones and some other ones throughout the desert, but certainly not enough for every pharaoh. So she was buried at a time when it was popular to bury underground in this rocky area in the desert called the Valley of the Kings. So why king when we're talking about a female? So in her statues, she is shown often with a beard and the male clothing at the time, which was kind of looked like a skirt, like a fitted skirt. But she did that because there were no images, there were no hieroglyphs that showed women in power. So she was looking for a symbol. There was no symbol of a female version of power, only the male version of power. So she just used what was available and had all of her statues and carvings done with the beard and the male clothing. Did she help Egypt? Yes. She focused on making sure Egypt had enough money. We call that economic stability. She increased trade, so she made sure that Egypt was selling products as well as getting products in, which is great if you like to shop. That means there were things available to purchase. She worked on buildings and monuments. A lot of them were to her, but also to other gods, or she was considered, pharaohs are always considered godlike, but she also had statues and monuments for gods and goddesses for worship. Also, when you are a pharaoh and you have a lot of buildings and monuments ordered, you're providing jobs to a lot of workers. That was good. She didn't try to conquer other lands like other pharaohs. So she wasn't focused on war and taking over other territories, which is good because that wasn't going to be a major loss of life for the military and for the soldiers. Did they find her mummy? Well, you might already know the answer since I told you that they were able to reconstruct what she might have looked like. So the answer is yes. Her mummy is in the Cairo Ancient Egyptian Museum, so you could go and see it if you wanted, along with a number of other mummies. She was found by a man named Howard Carter in 1903 and his team. He's an English guy. I'll show you a picture of him when we get to King Tut in a couple of days because he also found King Tut's tomb. Her tomb is known as KV20 in the Valley of the Kings. And the K and the V is just backwards, King Valley, number 20. And I'll show you a map so you could know where to find her. And her mummy for the longest time was ignored because they didn't know it was her. It was kind of like off on its own, wasn't in any kind of coffin or sarcophagus. So they just kind of was like, maybe that's nobody important. So they just named it KV60A until they figured out that it was somebody royal. Her tomb held 3 empty sarcophagi, so that's plural for sarcophagus. So there were 3 really beautiful coffins or sarcophagus, but they had nothing in them. So it took historians and archaeologists quite a while to piece together that that was her. So maybe her body was in one, but then had been tossed out by robbers. We're not sure. So how did they identify that body that just had that code at the beginning? And the answer is a tooth. So DNA testing, of course, is really sophisticated now, was not around in 1903. So since then, they've been able to figure out that it was likely her. Why was it so hard to identify her? And here's where her naughty stepson comes into it. Thutmose III had all of her images scraped off monuments and her name chiseled off statues to make it so that people didn't know she existed. But all of his efforts clearly didn't work because we know about her. Okay, so this is the Valley of the Kings map. So if you were to go there, which you could, it's open to tourists, you would know whose tomb you wanted to go to and where to go. So you can see on here, she is in number 20, KV20. So if you look, you could see all of them are numbered along here, and you can figure out where she would be in number 20. My mouse is not cooperating. She's over here. I don't know if you can see that on your screen or not. And there are some images if you were walking along the Valley of the Kings, that's what you would be seeing, lots of rock and desert, and then here's an aerial view. So all of your notes should be filled out at this time, and you just want to make sure that those are living in your notebook, and then you are all set. That's notebook page 33. And the back of those notes, if you printed front and back, has Tut, but if you didn't do that yet, don't worry about it because we will do Tut next week. All right, have a great day.